A more inauspicious beginning could not be imagined. One of 11 children, of whom only 5 survive long, Ben-Gurion lives in the isolated Russian-Polish shtetl of Plonsk. His mother dies when he is 11. David is, however, born into Zionism. He learns Hebrew on his grandfather's knee. His father, an early member of Hovevei Zion, or the Lovers of Zion movement, holds regular meetings at his home. David also enjoys an abundance of self-confidence and early on acquires a sense of mission. When, in 1896, Theodor Herzl publishes The Jewish State, news spreads, as David would later relate, of
a miraculous man, head and shoulders taller than other men, with beautiful features and a luminous face, adorned by a long black beard.
Ben-Gurion biographer Shabtai Tevet writes,
This unforgettable event lighted up a vision for his own life, that he was destined to be the Messiah's alter ego, a second Herzl.
At 14, David founds the Ezra Society, a group of youngsters dedicated to teaching Hebrew. In 1904, in a letter to a friend, he reveals his belief that he's destined for greatness.
I trust in the future ahead of me. In my imagination, I see it outlined, magnificent and brilliant, great and sublime.
His debating talents become evident in 1905 when he becomes active in the Poalei Zion, a Zionist Jewish workers' movement, and takes on its chief rival, the fiercely anti-Zionist Jewish Bund. Poalei Zion wants to create a model socialist society in Palestine. The Bund also wants a socialist utopia, but in Russia. Ben-Gurion biographer Michael Bar-Zohar writes,
Again and again, Bund headquarters in Warsaw, seeing Plonsk as a hard nut to crack, sent its finest orators there. Again and again, Ben-Gurion would mount the synagogue rostrum and rout them with his sharp tongue.
But Eretz Yisrael beckons. On September 7, 1906, not yet 20, Ben-Gurion leaves for Palestine. He says,
We had left behind our books and our theorizing, the hair-splitting and the argument, and had come to the land to redeem it by our labor.
In Jaffa, David attends Poalei Zion's founding conference in Palestine. He enjoys astonishing success and is elected to its 5-man central committee. For the next few years, he works as an agricultural laborer in one settlement or another, from Rishon LeZion to the Galilee. Often hungry, at one point he is so sick from malaria, a doctor warns that he must leave Palestine or die. David, displaying characteristic determination, ignores the warning. In 1910, David accepts an offer to work for a new labor Zionist journal in Jerusalem. From that point on, he engages full-time in public affairs. He takes a pen name, a Hebrew name after a hero of the Roman revolt, Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion develops his idea of Ottomanization. 2 years earlier, the Young Turks led a revolt against the absolute rule of Sultan Abdul Hamid, ushering in a multi-party democracy. Bar-Zohar explains Ben-Gurion's thinking.
Ottomanization, namely that the Jews of Palestine should renounce their foreign citizenship and become subjects of the Ottoman Empire. This would enable them to work towards the realization of their aims within legal and government channels. Accordingly, it was essential to establish a leadership that spoke Turkish and knew Ottoman law.
In November 1911, Ben-Gurion leaves for Salonika to learn Turkish, study law, and then, he hopes, enter the Turkish parliament. He replaces his Russian blouse with a suit and a fez. His studies are cut short when World War I breaks out. He and fellow student Yitzhak Ben Tzvi are on their way to Palestine for vacation. Ben-Gurion offers to recruit a Jewish militia for the Turks to defend Palestine. Even when Turkish Vizier of the Navy Jamal Pasha deports thousands of Jews from Palestine, Ben-Gurion clings to his Ottomanization plan. He clings to it even as he and Ben Tzvi are themselves deported, stamped on their passports to be banished forever from the Turkish Empire. Taking refuge in Egypt, Ben-Gurion sees the training and embarkation of the Zion Mule Corps, which will help the British fight Turkey at Gallipoli. He believes this will only enrage the Ottomans, whom he still is convinced will win the war. Ben-Gurion and Ben-Zvi traveled to the United States, still with the idea of organizing a large number of volunteers to return to Palestine to settle and help Turkey defend it. Ben-Gurion biographer Anita Shapira notes that the ability to see the essential reality of a situation for which Ben-Gurion would later be admired was nowhere in evidence at this time.
Jamal Pasha's general cruelty, as well as Turkish officials' hostility toward the Jews, should have shown Ben-Gurion that Zionism's only hope was to get rid of the imperial government in Palestine.
Ben-Gurion's efforts in the U.S. to win recruits for labor Zionist pioneering yield little fruit, though he does find himself a wife. Paula Munweis will later recall.
You should have seen his appearance, bleary-eyed and shabby. But as soon as he opened his mouth, I saw that this was a great man.
Ben-Gurion only fully discards his Ottomanization ideas after the Balfour Declaration in November 1917, in which Britain promises to create a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Ben-Gurion joins the Jewish Legion to help conquer Palestine for the British and winds up back in Egypt. While stationed in Egypt, Ben-Gurion meets Burl Katznelson, a man who will become one of the intellectual founders of labor Zionism. There is a meeting of the minds. Both agree that the Jewish workers should form the foundation of Jewish society in Palestine, and a necessary first step is to unify the workers' parties into a single movement. This would eliminate the internecine quarrels that impeded Zionism's progress. Shabtai Teveth notes that Ben-Gurion has still greater ambitions to make this workers' movement the leader of world Zionism. Ben-Gurion's plan would have seemed laughably grandiose to his fellow labor Zionists, and there was nothing to suggest he would succeed, as Anita Shapira writes.
In describing a leader's emergence, there is usually a tendency to discern future greatness, or at least the signs of it, in an earlier period. This is not so with Ben-Gurion. The anvil on which Ben-Gurion's talents could be forged had yet to be created.
The anvil of which Shapira speaks is about to be formed, and by his own hand.